Welcome everybody to the Writer Reads Chapter 1. This week we're going to read from the first chapter of the 5th book in the Mack and Me and Odyssey series, Mack and Me, The Wolves of Alpha 9. Alpha 9, it's about this. A relic from a near-forgotten war, an escaped concubine, and planetary annexation. When Mack's hunt for a crashed warship goes terribly wrong, Cutter and the crew find themselves embroiled in the politics of rebellion, interspecies warfare, and interclan domination. Throw in clan rivalries and a cub in need of rescue, and a simple wreck retrieval becomes a matter of life, death, and Odyssey. The only question is just how much trouble they can get into before they need help getting back out, and if someone will be there to aid them. Just be aware the main character swears like a sailor, and the support cast aren't much better. If swears bother you, then this story and this reading may not be to your taste. Without further ado, let's get into the first chapter of Mack and Me, The Wolves of Alpha 9. Alpha 9 will get there eventually. Chapter 1, A Room is a Rex. You want to go where? Tens was not impressed. With all due respect, Captain, are you out of your tiny little mind? I watched as Mack rolled an eye in Tens' direction, and was glad it was Tens who'd asked and not me. I wouldn't have been anywhere near as polite. And I wouldn't have gotten away with it. But if Tens was leading, don't go there, Cutter. Well, damn, the man was still reading me like a book. He smirked. Like that's ever going to change. He looked back over at Tens. We've hit a quiet patch, and I'm curious. The way he said it, you'd have thought that explained everything. Given it was Mack, it probably did. The man needed distracting. Yeah, Tens said, picking up on that thought, and I remembered that Mack wasn't the only one who could get inside my head. And we all know why. Shut it, Tens, was something I said in duet, Mack and I completely in agreement for a change. He stared back at us, shifting his gaze between us. Fine, he said. I don't suppose I need to remind you what happened the last time you two were there. And Mack and I looked at each other. Last time we'd been on Alpha 9 had been because Odyssey had asked, or rather insisted we go there, and I mean at gunpoint and with Mack's ship and crew as hostages. We'd been going to say no, and that wasn't an answer they'd take. Either way, we'd ended up going to Alpha 9, retrieving a missing data packet and leaping off a balcony some 10,000 feet above the Carafact. Tens had picked us up in a teleport beam before we'd gone more than 1,000, but it still had been one hell of a ride, and it wasn't one I wanted to repeat. I looked over at Mack and my heart sank. He really was serious. Damn straight I am, Cutter. Well, that told me. He sighed. It would make a break from our usual line of work, give the crew some downtime, and maybe net us a bounty on the Odyssey tech front. That last point was interesting, given that we'd netted enough bounties in the last 10 years that we probably didn't need to take another Odyssey contract ever again. I looked at him and saw the tension lurking in his shoulders. For some reason our agreement meant something. I watched his eyes widen and he shot me a quick sideways glance. It didn't help that Tens had caught that thought as well. I caught a second look from him and he shrugged. Sure, boss, it's your boat. From the way he said it, he might as well have been saying it was Mack's funeral, and that thought earned me rolled eyes from the pair of them. What, they thought I'd go easy on either of them just because I knew they were in my head? Since when had that ever been a factor? I'd given up trying to keep my thoughts out of my implant and private ever since I'd learned that it just wasn't something I could do with this model. And I didn't want to trade up. I was kind of comfortable knowing they were in my head. It wasn't like either of them could dictate how I felt, and the stars knew they'd both tried to do that often enough. Hey! I didn't even know why they bothered protesting. They were both as guilty as sin. If the shoe fits, I muttered, and then changed the subject. So, boss, these wrecks, you want to tell us about them? And Mack relaxed. I picked it up on the net, he said, and he was looking as cagey as hell, like there was some secret about the source that he was uneasy with me finding out. That had to mean a woman, and one he was pretty sure I'd disapprove of. I'm not flattering myself. Mac and I, we'd recently realised we had feelings, and it was as uncomfortable as hell. Since he'd never been worried about revealing his sources before, and he'd hidden plenty, then he had to have a reason, and I was guessing it was a woman. One that I'd disapprove of, or maybe one that he thought I'd be jealous of. Well, there was only one woman that had any chance of that. "So," I said, "when did you see Marie for this cosy little chat?" And Tens sputtered like he was trying real hard not to laugh. Case, our pilot, wasn't so subtle. She gave an inelegant snort and got out of her seat. "Ship's on course," she said as she crossed the command centre. "I don't need to be here for this." I could hear her cracking up as soon as the door to the command centre slid closed behind her. We met on Gresson," he admitted, and blushed red to the hairline. Tens took one look at him and started howling with laughter. "Tens?" Mac wasn't impressed, and Tens couldn't stop. It was the first time I'd ever seen the man fall out of his seat, and then he just lay on the floor, curled up and crying because he was laughing so hard. "Not funny, Tens," Mac snapped, and I bit back a snicker. "Just tell me," I said, and then said the one thing that was bothering me. "What was it? You needed one last fling? Wanted to make sure she really didn't want a bar of you and was never going to change her mind? What?" He stared at me, his face working through the range from denial to anger to horror, and finally frustration at not being able to get a word in edgewise. Oh, give it a rest, Cutter. I just wanted to tell her about you so she didn't hear it from anyone else." I froze. "Why? It's not like we're engaged." But I knew I was wrong the minute I said it. We weren't engaged, and we were still tiptoeing around the edge of declaring intent and exclusivity, but neither of us were looking for anyone else, and pretty much everyone else had picked Mac was taken before I'd been ready to admit he might be interested. Whatever. It didn't mean we were in love. And Tens stopped laughing. When he spoke, he was as serious as the stars. "It kinda does, you know." I wanted to tell him to fuck off, but I didn't. He was right, no matter how much I didn't want to admit it. And no matter how much Mac was being cautious about that final step, we both knew we were in it but deep, as Abby liked to say. But we weren't quite ready to admit just how deep. I looked over at Mac, and he looked back. I caught a flash of vulnerability through the link we shared, and then it was gone. Still, it took more courage than either of us wanted to acknowledge for him to ask the next question. "So, we okay?" I rolled my shoulders in an elaborate shrug. "Sure, Mac. Why wouldn't we be?" And he took a peek into my head to see that it was true before he continued with his story. "She kissed me," he said, and I stared at him. "Why'd she do that?" "Because she was happy," he said, and I heard what he didn't add, that I'd found someone new. And he was as conflicted as hell about that. He didn't know whether to be relieved or disgusted with himself. Stupid man. I looked up and caught him staring. "What you guys had was special, and she was nice enough to want you to be happy without her." "Oh, right. Oh, for fuck's sake." Tens was obviously sick of the mushy stuff. "All of this touchy-feely shit and you haven't even shagged yet. Why don't you just get to the point?" He looked from Mac to me and back again, and then spelt it out for us. "The Rex? Marie obviously wanted to give you a pairing gift." It was my turn to blush. I squashed the urge, feeling the colour rise and fade in a short-lived burst of heat. "Whatever. She gave you data. You want to go looking for the Rex on Alpha 9, where, I might add, you and I are not flavour of the month, so you obviously have a plan, right?" Mac shrugged. "Nope. That's why I raised it. Thing is, Marie said the Rex are old, like Wolf War old. So they're old tech and buried deep because of the weapons they used there." Well, they would be old, but I didn't know enough about what happened in the Wolf Wars to even start having a clue about what weapons had been used on Alpha 9. As far as I knew, the wars themselves hadn't touched the world. I slid out of my seat. "Looks like I have some research to do," I said. "I'll send Case in to take over." Mack looked at me. "I know nothing of the wolf wars," I said, "and this is a retrieval job and a half. Your Marie knew what she was doing when she passed it to you. She must like you a lot." I watched the colour flow over his face and down his throat. "She used to," he muttered, and I remembered the stories about just how far Mack had gone to try and convince Marie to come back. I mean, the ship was named for her, for fuck's sake. The man had fallen hard, been as smitten as anyone could possibly be. The fact that everyone thought he'd fallen just as hard for me was a little disturbing. Not that he'd let it show. I think I'd forced the admission out of him at a time of stress. We'd been about to head out on a mission, and I'd told him not to worry about me, because I knew he was taken, and it wasn't me. And he'd told me it was. And I was fucked if I could work out why. I felt the shift in Mack's head when he decided not to explain, felt a barrier go up between us as though he struggled for distance. Whether for me or for him, I didn't know, and I wasn't going to pry. The man had a right to his privacy. "Damn right the man does," he said, and Tens groaned. "Seriously, you two really need to sort yourselves out." We both glared at him, and then I threw up my hands and headed out. "I've got some research to do," I said. "I'll look into the wolf wars and what sort of shit was flying around back in the day." Tens focused. "And I'll see if I can find us a reason to pay Alpha 9 a visit, given what the two of you did the last time you were allowed on the planet." I wondered if we'd ever be able to live that down, and then decided the answer was probably no. You do know they might not let you back, right? Yeah, I knew that. I also knew Tens was more than capable of finding a way around it if he wanted to badly enough. I wondered what it would take to make him want it that badly. Another date with Abby, perhaps? Don't go there, Cutter. Not ever. And I got the impression that going there might be a really bad idea. "I'll haul your ass out of the computer training," Mack said, which reminded me that I still had sparring and time on the range to look forward to. If I was lucky, he wouldn't let our pet assassins loose on my ass. Given that was going to curtail my research a bit more than I wanted, I hauled ass out of there and headed to the rec centre. And that is where we're going to leave them. If you've enjoyed this episode, please hit like. If you'd like to see more, please hit subscribe, and I will check you later. Take care out there.